say amen. Take your neighbor by the hand on the left and on the right. As you do, just say to them, I'm glad you're here today. And God, as I hold on to my neighbor, I thank you and praise you for their life, for everything they've been through, everything they've survived, everything they've endured, everything they've overcome. And I pray now for them as I hold their hand that you would strengthen them, comfort them, empower them, that this week might be better than last. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to put those mighty hands together. Good morning at the beginning of the nation celebration of Black History. And my personal confession, I don't celebrate just 28 days because I'm black all year long. So every day I wake up, I celebrate being a black man. You don't know what I come through, we are grateful to God to welcome all of you and greet all of you. And there's a word we want to share with you. If you have your scriptures, whether in hardback or in digital copy, out of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 20 through 22. And I'm going to read it out of the New International Version of the Bible. And I want to tag this text with the title, 12 Years a Slave. And the text there says, just then a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his garment. For she said to herself, if I only touch the hem of his garment, I will be healed. Jesus turned and saw her. Take heart, daughter, he said, your faith has healed you. And from that moment, the woman was healed. And all the people said, amen. You may be seated. In her book, Freedom at Risk, The Kidnapping of Free Blacks in America, author Carol Wilson writes that the kidnapping of free blacks into slavery in pre-Civil War America has been a topic frequently noted by scholars but not examined in any detail. However, the kidnapping of free blacks for sale as slaves was an all too common occurrence in the United States during the decades between the Revolution and the Civil War. 12 Years a Slave, an epic film based on the 1853 autobiography of Solomon Northup, tells the violently tragic but ultimately redemptive tale of one such kidnapping victim. It delivers a riveting, shocking, and heartbreaking glimpse into the practices of slavery in pre-Civil War America, giving viewers a documentary-like perspective while gazing unblinkingly at scenes of unthinkable brutality and inhumanity in one moment and desperate hope matched with incredible tenderness in the next. It's 1841, and Solomon Northup kisses his wife Anne and two children, Margaret and Alonzo, goodbye for what all of them think will be a 3-week separation. The well-educated violinist living in Saratoga, New York, is then introduced to two men bearing a lucrative offer. Hamilton and Brown work reportedly with a circus in Washington, D.C., whose performers, they report, are in need of a violin player. The pair offers to pay Solomon handsomely for 2 weeks of work, and Solomon agrees. But after they pay him, they drug and abduct him. 1 minute, he's enjoying dinner with Hamilton and Brown. The next, he comes in shackles where he receives the first of what would be many beatings. Soon he's dumped into a paddle boat headed south, away from freedom, away from dignity, away from his family, towards 12 years of slavery. En route to the cotton and sugarcane plantations in Louisiana, Solomon quickly realizes that pleading his status as a free man will only result in more beatings. He also realizes that resisting under the present circumstance would likely end in his death. So Solomon steels himself against his fate, determined to resist despair, to maintain hope, and one day to return to his family again. The reality of his oppression is one of grim violence, dreadful pain, rape, and death, with the only positive in this morass of immorality and inhumanity being Solomon's relentless searching and looking for a way through, a way to keep living, a way to find his way out of the superlative wrongness into which he had been plunged. After 12 years in slavery, Solomon meets a Canadian carpenter named Bass, who's outspoken in his criticism of human trafficking, believing that all people are the same in the eyes of God and rejecting the then commonly held notion that blacks were subhuman. Bass heard Solomon's story and changed his life forever by helping him to recapture his freedom. And similarly, in the text we're teaching today, a woman's life is changed forever when she meets Jesus and is set free from the debilitating illness that had enslaved her for 12 years. She's introduced in the story as a woman with no name, who had been subject, the writer says, to bleeding for 12 years. In this ancient community, that meant that not only was she sick, in pain, and unable to have children, but she was also considered ceremonially unclean, which meant she was not allowed to be touched. She couldn't touch others, others couldn't touch her. She was isolated and alone day after day, month after month, year after year. She was denied the privilege of human and common interaction. She couldn't go to public worship. She couldn't congregate with crowds for 12 years. No one had hugged her, held her hand, shook her hand, or laid a hand on her. For 12 years, life hemorrhaged from her body, leaving her pale, weak, and anemic. Now dejected and poor, she had exhausted all of her financial resources, going to one physician after another to no avail. Considered hopeless and incurable, she is denied even the dignity of identification because in the text she has no name, which is the storyteller's way of sharing that in the eyes of her community, she was insignificant and inconsequential. For 12 years, she had been enslaved by her condition and incarcerated by her issue. And everybody has an issue. Your issue may not be mine, and my issue may not be yours, but rest assured, everybody on your road today has an issue. An issue is a condition, attitude, or circumstance that robs us of the thriving, abundant life that God desires for all of us to have. Arrogance is an issue. Poverty is an issue. Bitterness is an issue. Jealousy is an issue. Insecurity is an issue. Control is an issue. Fear, rebellion, and physical limitations are all issues. And issues can be private, past, or present. That may be why you're so mean. That may be why you lose it every time something goes wrong. That may be why you are terrified of being rejected. That may be why you can't stand being alone. That may be why you cannot forgive. That's why you see the speck in everybody else's eye, but overlook the log that's in your own. That's why we continue to experience the same frustrations, irritations, and aggravations year after year, because the untold truth is we haven't dealt with our own issue. I wonder, is there anybody honest enough listening to me today to admit that you have an issue? Because everybody has an issue. Some of them are generational. My daddy was this way. My mama did it like this. Everybody in my family drinks, smokes, cusses, cheats, lies, and cannot be trusted. Nobody went to college. Nobody got married. Nobody owned a home. Nobody operated a business. Some of our issues are generational and others are generated. They are the result of bad choices that we have made years ago. But everybody has an issue that, if left untended, can gag your present, impair your development, mute your testimony, immobilize your advance, and keep you from realizing your God-given destiny. If you don't mind, look at your neighbor and help me teach them. Say, don't let your issue block your destiny. See, because for 12 years, this woman had been enslaved by her condition, incarcerated by her issue. However, her inclusion in the text is a hopeful testimony to all of us that you are never down so low that the Lord can't lift you up, that you are never too messed up to be straightened out, you are never too broken up for the Lord to fix you up. You can never be gone so far that the Lord can't find you where you are and bring you back. Because somehow, despite her isolation, separation, and segregation, this woman heard about Jesus and determined within herself that if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I believe I will be healed. And there it is, my friends. That's the key to freedom in any circumstance or situation that enslaves us, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how long you may have been that way. You have to hold out hope that things can still change. Would you just shake somebody's hand and tell them, say, hold out hope. That means that if you are sick, you got to believe that you can be healed. If you are broke, you have to believe you can do better. If you are unemployed, you have to believe that there's a job out there somewhere. If you are down, you have to believe that you can get up. If you are enslaved, you have to believe that you can get free. You hold out hope. Keep your thoughts hopeful. Keep your words hopeful. Keep your inner dialogue healthy. Regardless of what people say about you or say to you, you've got to say the right things to yourself. And that's what she did. She began to say to herself, if I can touch the hem of his garment, I know I'll be made whole. Notice how inclusive and participatory her prescription is. If I can touch, I recognize that my healing requires my participation, that my deliverance requires my participation, that my elevation and advancement and promotion in life require my participation. The Lord could do it without me, but I believe that the Lord wants to do it with me and do it through me if I can touch. And notice how affirming, positive, and constructive her conversation is in the absence of others to affirm her and validate her. She validates herself. The text says she talks to herself. You can't always wait for others to recognize the validity of what you're trying to do. Sometimes, friends, you got to talk to yourself. You have to encourage yourself. You have to applaud yourself. You have to affirm yourself. And that's why you have to be careful what you say when you talk to yourself. When you talk to yourself, you need to build yourself up and not tear yourself down. You need to believe that you can and stop telling yourself that you can't. You need to affirm your possibilities and not just repeat and reiterate your problems and your pain. You need to have empowering conversations that will help you to make it through the day and make it through the rest of your life. You need to have conversations with yourself that will bring out the best in you. And most of us learned this early. I shall never forget the lesson that I learned at Columbia Elementary School in Detroit about the little engine that could. When faced with a seemingly insurmountable mountain, that little engine had a conversation with itself. And all the way up the mountain, that mountain considered formidable and insurmountable, the little engine was saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And then when it reached the top, coming down on the backside, it was overheard saying, I knew I could, I knew I could. See, every dream, every vision, every program, every idea, every business, every great and noble cause came into existence because some person or group of persons believed that they could meet the challenge and face the need. And the converse of that is also true, that many dreams, plans, aspirations, and ideas have fallen by the wayside because people could not summon enough courage to hold on to the hope that things could change. You must believe that you can do anything. You can go anywhere. You can have anything that you dare to claim by the grace of God. You've got to hold out hope that Jesus has the power to deal with your issues no matter what they are. You may not have the strength, but Jesus does. You may not be able, but Jesus is. You may lack the ability, but Jesus has all the capability you will ever require. Because day after day for 12 years, she lived with this seemingly incurable disease. Night after night for 12 years, she had been tortured by the prospect of her terminal illness. And yet, even while her life was ebbing away, she still held out hope that her malady could be cured. That's step number one. But step number two, if you're ready to be free, if you're ready to live your life on an entirely new level, you're not only going to have to hold out hope, you're going to have to make a move. Would you encourage somebody near you? Just smile at them and say, make a move, neighbor. Because the text says she had invested all her money in one false cure after another, trying to get better and rid herself of this nagging affliction. There was not a counselor or a quack or a therapist that did not know her and seek to sell her some type of remedy. And yet, after trying everything within her sphere of influence and anything that they had to offer, she kept getting worse. Now, with all of her money gone, with walls of confinement closing in around her, she realized that something in her situation had to change. And I don't know quite who I'm talking to yet, but you're at that point right now. You're at the point where you are saying in yourself, within yourself, something's got to change. I can't take it no more. I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of being lonely. I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of being frustrated. I'm tired of being manipulated. I'm tired of being neglected and overlooked. I'm tired of being sad, tired of being depressed. Something has got to change. Go on, push your neighbor, say, I know this is your word. Amen. See, because if you want something different, you have to do something different. If you won't read, you won't learn. If you won't pray, don't expect an answer. If you don't give, you will not receive. If you don't knock, the door will not come open. If you won't seek, you won't find. You've got to make a move. She did not wallow in self-pity. She didn't wait for an appointment. She didn't have time to talk to a disciple who knew a disciple who knew a disciple who knew a disciple who could hook her up with Jesus. But based solely on what she had heard about Jesus, she made a move towards Jesus, believing that Jesus could make a difference in her life. And that's a word for somebody now. God sent you here today so I can tell you it's time for you to make a move. Nothing will move until you do. And she made a move based solely on what she had heard. She heard on the grapevine that Jesus traveled all over the region of Galilee. And so she gathered together in my mind's eye her last few drachma, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and set out in search of Jesus. She heard that he was in Bethesda, so she went there first and found a man who had been lying by a pool for 38 years, waiting for an angel to come and stir up the water. She asked him about Jesus, and he said, yes, I know him. I was paralyzed by the pool for 38 years until Jesus came by and told me something crazy. He said, take up your bed and walk. Jesus made a difference in my life. She kept on moving and ran into a man who was pulling off his hearing aid. He had been deaf all his life. She yelled at the man and he said, you ain't got to talk loud to me now. I can hear you perfectly now, because I ran into a man named Jesus. He opened my ears and now I can hear children laughing, birds singing, and people talking. Jesus made a difference in my life. She kept on walking, encouraged by what she had heard, until she ran into Bartimaeus, who was walking his seeing eye dog with both of his eyes now wide open. And Bartimaeus said, you got to understand, I've been blind my whole life, until one day Jesus spat on the ground, mixed it up in some dirt, anointed my eyes, and told me to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. And when I did, I received my sight, and now I've got a new song to sing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like I once was lost. But now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Jesus made a difference in my life. She saw a young girl and a teenage boy playing in the streets of the city of Nain. She asked the girl about Jesus, and the girl said, he did a miraculous thing for me. He raised me from the dead. And the young boy said, that ain't nothing. I got shot in a drive-by on the playground, and they were having my funeral, and Jesus stopped the funeral procession and brought me back to life. Jesus made a difference in my life. Based on what she heard, she made a move. But when she found Jesus, he was surrounded by a compact crowd that appeared impossible to penetrate. Which brings us to step number 3. If you're ready to be free, if you're ready to live your life on an entirely new level, you're going to have to hold out hope. You're going to have to make a move, but then you're going to have to take a chance. She did not bemoan her sickness of bleeding, guided only by her desire to be healed. She moved quietly, inspirationally, and passionately into position, because intuitively she understood that positioning matters in all of life. Somebody ought to grab that. Tell your neighbor, say, positioning matters. On a personal note, one of my appliances broke this week, and I had to call the repair person. They confirmed the appointment by email, but then before I closed the email, I noted something that they had written on the bottom of the email. It said, the service person will be there at such and such time on such and such day, and the appliance must be service ready. Now I knew what that meant. It meant that the person would be available who could fix what was broken in my house. But anything near or around that appliance that blocked access to the appliance had to be removed in order to make it service ready. And that's what's happening in this text. Her life was broken, but she held out hope that if she just made a move, that things could be fixed. But the crowd was blocking her blessing. I could work right there, because for so many of us, it's the crowd that keeps us from being us. Our hate, heightened concern about what the crowd is saying, what the crowd is thinking, how the crowd is looking at me, keeps us from being service ready. So to get past the crowd, she had to take a chance. Her willingness to do it resembles what novelist Ralph Ellison identified once as the autobiographical chronicle of personal catastrophe expressed lyrically. Like the protagonist in any story, she stirs this narrative into being as she steps out of her comfort zone, trying to connect with Christ. It is her actions, not her words, that speak of her faith. Indeed, her actions are evangelistic in that she moves beyond her own weak, disenfranchised body. And in that moment, her frail frame became a voice, a prayer, and a protest against the sickness that had incarcerated her. An undeniable justification that dragged her gracefully through the crowd in search of the healing that only Christ could convey. The text does not indicate that she intentionally or rudely bumped into the other people in the crowd. She just took a chance. She's still bleeding and belongs to what the activist Angela Davis identifies in her text Blues Legacy as an outsider. As an outsider, she lived in a state of paradoxical invisibility because not even the disciples of Jesus realize she is in their presence. She does not announce her infirm body. She moves through the crowd because of what she heard about Jesus. She carried a psychological, physical, and spiritual weariness with social implications. It is unrelenting because her bleeding is unyielding. And yet, though she is weary, she moved through the crowd with a grief-stricken hopefulness that pushed her beyond the temporal reality of her physical condition. Ellen G. White suggested that she had a soul hunger, a hunger that could only be satisfied by God. Her tedious adventure into the crowd became her performance of protest against the issue that had betrayed her body. She had been 12 years a slave. She stepped into the crowd representative of her community, a community, notice, that did not come looking for her. Indeed, a community that does not seem to notice, sense, or embrace her existence. She swims through the crowd, and don't miss this, touching everybody. The rule was, with her sickness, touch nobody. But here she's touching everybody, which meant, parenthetically, that if she was truly unclean, so were they. She has one objective: to touch Jesus so that she can be healed. She was desperate, so desperate that her pain became her purpose. And we've seen this in our lifetime. It was 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama. Our historical foreparents were tired of bus segregation. So for 381 days, they stretched their consciousness up toward the sky and gathered the strength and the tenacity to walk until bus segregation was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in December of 1956. See, when you're desperate enough for things to be different, you will do what you got to do in order to make things change. She was desperate, and somebody here has been there, desperate, where you don't care anymore what people think. You don't care anymore what people say. You're not trying to win a popularity contest. You don't care if they like you on Facebook or follow you on Instagram. You don't have time for anything fake, whether it's fake friends or fake news, because you need something from the Lord. Is there anybody here who's unashamed to say to God, God, I'm desperate. I've been trying to make it, but I'm not going to fake it anymore. It's not working. I'm tired of fronting for everybody else. I need you now. I'm struggling, and I don't care who knows about it. I'm desperate. I don't want to chit-chat. I don't want to kick it with Craig and them. I'm going through something. I'm fighting some battles. I'm struggling with some stuff. I'm about to lose my mind. Ain't got no time to play games. I need something from the Lord. And that's why, my friends, you can't let others contain your praise or control your worship, because what you need, only the Lord can supply. So the next time that people look at you strange, because your hands are lifted, your tears are flowing, your feet are padded, or your voice is shouting, you have my permission to look at your non-shouting neighbor in the eye and say, I understand. You don't shout like I shout because you haven't struggled like I've struggled. You haven't been through what I've been through. But I will bless the Lord at all times, because nobody but the Lord brought me out. You gotta take a chance. But then finally, my friends, don't give up. The crowd was in her way, but this woman fixed her eyes on Jesus. She was simply one more face in a sea of humanity, her heart filled with equal amounts of hope and fear. She stepped across the threshold of her own seclusion and into a sea of seekers. Now anonymous, this sister was caught in the undertow of human desperation. and swept silently towards the source of all healing and life. Around her a forest of arms and hands, stretched and strained to receive something from the Lord. But she kept talking to herself, saying, I may not be able to meet it. We may not be able to take a selfie together. I may not be able to get to it. But if I can touch the hem of his garment, I believe I'll be made whole. Then in a moment of desperation, her eyes focused on the tassel that was tied to the corner of his garment, the holiest part of his rabbinical robe, a blue and white tassel called in Hebrew a zizah, hung from the corner of his outer garment, between his shoulder blades and over his heart. This was the emblem of God's law and covenant faithfulness to the people of God. Her heart raced as rationale gave way to impulse, and desperation, destitution, and defilement. She reached out for Jesus' tassel. She thrust her hand through his sea of humanity and touched the hem of his garment. Now the Greek word here is in the middle voice, which means she clutched at it, she pulled at it, she yanked at it, and when she did, suddenly something surged through her body. The power in him touched the pain in her. The strength in him lifted the stress off her, and in an instant a rush of healing coursed through her body. And the Bible says immediately. Somebody just shout, immediately. The flow of lifeblood was stopped up. The instant she touched the hem of his garment, there was a power transfer. And this is shocking and unexpected. And here's why. Because if you read the text, typically when that which is unclean touches that which is clean, that which is clean becomes unclean. Let me make it plain. If I've got the flu and I sneeze on you, we say, I gave you the flu. Now that doesn't mean I don't have the flu anymore. That just means now we both got the flu. Because when the unclean touches the clean, then the clean becomes unclean. But hallelujah, because here, when the unclean touches the clean doesn't become unclean, but the unclean becomes clean. We don't know where to shout, because now her face, which a moment earlier had been pained and blushed, was filled with the vigor of life. Now her hands, cold and still a minute ago, trembled with newfound excitement. Now her soul, bitter and alone, was filled with awe at what the Lord had done for her. She touched him until he turned around. She thought it would be a quick, unnoticed, one-way meeting. But Jesus said to her, as he looked at her daughter, take heart, because your faith has made you well. But don't rush past that. Notice how personal this is. Your faith has made you well. Not my power, but your faith has made you well. Not the faith of Bartimaeus, who cried, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Not the faith of Jairus, who said, just speak the word, Lord, and my daughter will be healed. Not the faith of the Syrophoenician woman, who began to holler, Jesus, heal my daughter. But Jesus said, your faith. And I don't know who I'm preaching to, but God told me to tell you before you leave, your faith can make you whole. Right here, right now. This is your day to get free, because your faith can heal you. Stop looking around, staring down, looking at the ground. Your faith can make you whole. You gotta have enough faith to hold out hope. You gotta have enough faith to take a chance. You gotta have enough faith to make your move. You gotta have enough faith not to give up, because your faith make you whole. joy. Your faith will save your kids. Your faith will restore your home. Your faith will turn it around and give you the victory. You got to have faith. Jesus is here. Shake somebody's hand and say, touch him today. Healing is here. Take it today. Deliverance is here. Receive it today. If you gotta run, run. If you have to walk, walk. If you got to crawl, crawl. Reach out and touch it today. If you anybody here, say, I'm ready. I'm ready to be healed. I'm ready to be delivered. I'm ready to be blessed. I'm ready to live my life. I'm ready to let God use me. Then reach out and heal. Your faith will make the difference. And don't ever look at your life and look at your circumstance and say, I'm not a slave anymore. God has set me free. God's promise. No matter how long you've been enslaved, you are now a son. You are now a daughter because of your faith. Shake somebody's hand, say it's already on the inside of you. You just gotta make a move. You gotta take a chance. You gotta believe. You gotta receive. That's my invitation to all of you, my brothers and sisters, to walk down this aisle right now. Meet me at this altar as a candidate for baptism.